get into the material centered around content development and creating people-first content. Now, I'm going to give you fair warning here as we move into this section. May not be a surprise to you, but creativity is required. However, I rush to point out that you should not worry. When I do and have done this class in a live in-person setting, I can see people's faces. And when I'll say creativity is required, half the people will look like they're horrified. And I know immediately those are the people that think that they're not creative. And so if you're a person like that, I'd like to say, don't worry. Everyone has creativity inside of them, often without realizing it. Now, keep in mind that SEO uses your whole brain. You've very often heard of the whole dichotomy, right brain versus left brain, and how people tend to be dominant towards logic and analysis, and other people tend to be dominant towards visual, language skills, creativity, and so forth. Well, SEO requires that you rely on both halves of your brain. There's aspects of SEO that are very technical in nature and very analytical in nature. So that tends to speak to the analytical half of your brain, the logical half of your brain. And there's other aspects, such as creating content, where it's very helpful, in fact, essential to show some creativity. But I've never met a computer programmer, for example, who was not creative. Everybody has to be creative at some point, because even if you're doing it in a logical manner, you're creating something, and so you've got that spark of creativity. Remember that when it comes to this whole right versus left brain, everyone has both halves of their brain. Now, one of the ways that we can unlock creativity is to learn from organizations that have institutionalized creativity. And one of the favorite examples I have of that is Disney. Both Walt Disney as the founder of the organization and Disney as a company, as it has survived him. Now, Disney, a lot of biographers have pointed out that Walt Disney, the man, had in essence 3 different parts of his nature that he relied upon. And those were described by many as dreamer, realist, and critic. I read one time a quote by one of Disney's employees who worked with him. And he said that you never know which type of Walt would show up at a meeting. But the useful thing for Disney was he leveraged his own realization of himself, that there were parts of him that were a dreamer. There was a part of him that was very realistic, down to earth, savvy, business sense, and there was part of him that was a critic that would be able to look at ideas and say, this idea is just never going to fly. There's a great article on this. It's not that long to read. I'm going to put a link right there. You see it on screen, and you can see that the article is using Walt Disney's technique to model a path to creative success. Now, we don't have time to really get into a creativity coaching session here. When we've done live workshops, often we will do that type of thing, but this format it's one of the few areas where we find that the distance learning format doesn't really allow us to replicate something we might do in a live class. But even though we don't have a brainstorming creativity type of session, as we proceed, I will bring this up because I want you to not be discouraged if you hear that little voice saying, oh, but you're not creative, or I'm not creative. And I've had people say, I'm just not creative. And I'd like you to shut that voice down. Tell that voice to step aside, because everybody is creative. Now, as we go, you might find that from the depths of your imagination, ideas will pop into your head about how you can use some of the principles that we discuss here in order to bring creativity to the content that you develop. So be ready to jot down ideas as you go and notice that they are there. Let your mind relax, take in the big picture. And when we get into things like personas, as I described that, you'll see that there's an ability to be able to have fun with that as well.